Hi everyone, so in this video I will talk about the public goods. So before that, let's do a brief review of last videos. For example, what are the efficient property right structures? A. Exclusivity, B. Transferability, C. Enforceability, and D. All. So the correct answer is D. All. Efficient property right structures include exclusivity, transferability, and enforceability. Go back. If you want to see more details about the definition of those three, you can go back to the last lecture notes. Second, in the graph, what is the socially efficient outcome? So the socially efficient outcome is determined by the marginal benefits curve and the marginal social cost curve. So E star is the socially efficient outcome. So what is the unregulated market equilibrium? So the unregulated market equilibrium is determined by the marginal private benefits and marginal private costs. So their intersection would be E. So the answer for question 2 is E. What is the deadweight loss? As I introduced in the last video, an easier way to decide the deadweight loss is to first find the unregulated market equilibrium E, then find the corresponding quantity Qm, connect E and Qm, extend this line to marginal social costs. A. The triangle enclosed by unregulated market equilibrium, social equilibrium, and A is the deadweight loss. Next two concepts are willingness to pay and willingness to accept. Willingness to pay is the maximum amount that you are willing to pay to avoid environmental damage. Willingness to accept is the minimum amount that you are willing to accept to tolerate environmental damage. The cost theorem. The cost theorem says that in the absence of transaction costs, if property rights are well-defined and tradable, voluntary negotiation will lead to social efficiency. So what does that mean? If there is no transaction costs, if there are only a small number of parties, and if those parties can easily be identified, no matter who has the property rights, because those parties can negotiate with each other. Finally, the market would lead to the efficiency level of allocation or the efficiency level of outcome. So that is the cost theorem. So here is an overview of this video. First, we will talk about the rival and excludable good. Then we will talk about the public good. What does the non-excludable and when I move to the rival and excludable good, I would be like to make a definition of non-excludable and non-rival. Non-excludable means that I cannot exclude those who fail to pay from using a good. Non-rival means that my consumption of a specific good does not reduce the amount of the good available to others. So if a good is non-rival and non-excludable, that good is a public good. We call that pure public goods. If a good is rival and excludable, we call that pure private goods. If a good is excludable and non-rival, we call that club goods. We if a good is rival and non-excludable, we call that common property goods. So think in your mind, can you come up with some examples of each category? Here are some examples. For example, the banana, the coffee, the clothes, the house, all those goods, I call it private goods. Because if you cannot pay for it, you cannot consume it, right? I can exclude you from consuming those goods if you didn't pay for that. Also, my consumption of a cup of coffee would reduce the amount available for you to consume, right? So that is a private good. So how about the public good? The air, the national defense, the firework, the street light. Can I exclude you from consuming air? Can I exclude you from breathing? Can I exclude you from watching the fireworks? No, I can't. Also, my experience from watching fireworks would not diminish the amount of fireworks available for you to watch, right? So that is non-rival. When a good is non-excludable and non-rival, we say that good is a public good. But think about Netflix and Disney Plus, also Toll Road. So for those goods, can I exclude you, or I can say, can Netflix exclude you from using it? Yes, they can. If you didn't pay for that, you have no access to use that, right? However, if I pay for the membership, if you pay for the membership, when I am watching the movie, can I affect your ability can I affect your ability to watch the same movie? No, that would not happen. So a club good is excludable but non-rival. You cannot use it if you didn't pay for that. But one person's consumption would not affect the amount of good available for others. The next category would be common property resources. Think about fish, timber, clean fresh water, public library. So for example, I cannot exclude you from timber, or from consuming the clean fresh water, or from studying in a public library, right? I cannot do that. However, if I'm sitting in a specific place in a public library, you cannot stay in the same place because I was there. So that is a rival. That is the meaning of rival. I cannot exclude you from using those resources like the ocean fishery, the timber, fresh water, public library, public park. However, when I am using that, my activity would affect your ability to consume that. So that is the definition of non-excludable and rival. So can we rely on the market to produce the efficient amount of public goods? So unlikely we cannot do that. Why? Think about the negative externality case. Pollution. Pollution is also one of the public goods, but with negative externality. The market equilibrium is E. The social equilibrium is O. We want to reach social equilibrium, but without regulation, without the government's regulation, the competitive market will reach E. So that means unregulated market leads to much pollution at a lower price. The price of polluting goods is too low, right? So that's a case of externality. So another case is a public good with positive externality. Think about the education, the high school education, the middle school education. So without a regulation, our private marginal benefits line would be this one, the black downsloping line. The private marginal cost line would be this black upsloping line. The intersection is E. However, we want to reach this level O, the intersection of social marginal benefits and the marginal cost curve. Without government's help, we cannot reach this level. Why? Because the competitive market will stop at this one. So that means without regulation, the markets, even though the market is a competitive one, it still underprovides a public good, right? So from those two examples, we can say that we cannot rely on the market to produce the efficient amount of public goods. Like the biodiversity is one example of public goods. So what determines the efficient level of public goods? Or we can say what determines the efficient level of any good? The marginal willingness to pay, the marginal benefits curve, or we can say the demand curve. So why will a competitive market not supply the efficient level of biodiversity? That's just the same question we ask. Why can't we rely on the market to produce the efficient amount of public goods? Because the good is a public good, we have no incentive to disclose the true willingness to pay, because we pay for it or not, it will not change our ability to get benefits from it, right? Like think about the national defense. The national defense is going to protect the whole country. So if you live in this country, that means whether you pay for it or not, you will still be, no matter what, you will be protected, right? Also, actually, one person's action, for example, Amy's payment for the national defense, or Amy choose to not to pay for the national defense. Her personal choice would not affect her personal choice would not affect the decision of the national defense, right? So from those two reasons, people would have no incentives to disclose true willingness to pay. So that is also called a free rider problem. So that is someone who gets benefits from a good or service. They don't contribute to the supply of that good or service. That means, on the other hand, that means we have the wrong marginal benefits curve, because some of people, they don't pay anything, but they also benefit from that good, right? So think about the music online. Did you download more than you uploaded, or did you download something that you didn't pay for that? Some file sharing may mandate a minimal ratio to try and prevent free riding, right? So that's the free rider problem. And think about another public good, street light. Suppose there are 2 residents in a neighborhood demand 3 new street lights, and suppose 3 street lights can light up the street. So how many street lights need to be provided? I will say 3, right? So if there are 10 residents, how many street lights need to be provided? Also 3 or more. So what is the marginal willingness to pay of each person? What is the social marginal willingness to pay? Social marginal benefits of 10 persons. That's the key question we want to answer. And when we get the social marginal benefits, we can let social marginal benefits equal to social marginal costs. Then we can get the social efficient level of street light. So suppose there are only 2 residents, A and B, and here is A's demand function for a street light, and here is B's demand function for a street light. So at each level of price, A's demand would be changed. Right? And at each level of price, B's demand of street lights would also be changed, right? So I think those 2 tables are very easy to understand. For example, when the price is equal to 1, the quantity demanded for A would be 5, because 6 minus 1 is equal to 5. For example, when the price is equal to 4, then the quantity demanded for B is equal to 2, because 4 minus 0.5 times 4 is equal to 2, right? So to get the aggregate demand curve, so to get the sum of demand curve of those 2 persons, let's do a little math first. First, we need to write down the inverse demand function. We already have QA equals to 6 minus P. Then we need to write down PA equals to 6 minus Q. We call that inverse demand function, or P as a function of Q. For B, we already know QB equals to 4 minus 0.5 P. So when we want to have P as a function of Q, we have PB equals to 8 minus 2 times Q, right? So according to those 2 inverse demand functions, we can plot each one's demand curve here in this figure. So the black line is A's demand curve. When the price equal to 6, the quantity is equal to 0. For B, when the price is equal to 8, for B, when the price is equal to 8, the corresponding quantity is equal to 0, right? So when we have each individual's willingness to pay for each unit of a good, we can get the aggregate willingness to pay or social planner's demand. We only need to sum A's willingness to pay and B's willingness to pay. For example, when the quantity is equal to 0, A's willingness to pay for one more unit is 6, and B's willingness to pay for one more unit is 8. Then the aggregate willingness to pay is 14. Right? So when the quantity is equal to 1, A's willingness to pay is 5, B's willingness to pay is 6, then the aggregate willingness to pay is 11. So 14, 11, 8, 5, 2, 1, 0 are the willingness to pay, are the aggregate willingness to pay at each level of quantity demanded. So when we plot the relationship between quantity and aggregate willingness to pay in this graph, we get this blue line, the aggregate demand for street lights, right? So from this graph, from this example, we can know the social marginal benefit is the sum of price by each person at each level of quantity. Keep in mind that for public good, the social marginal benefit is the sum of price by each person at each level of quantity. Why? That's because for public goods, we cannot change the quantity provided. For example, we cannot change the air. We cannot change the air. We cannot change the air provided. We cannot change the amount of the national defense, right? We cannot change the quantity provided. However, everyone has different willingness to pay at specific quantity level. So to get the aggregate demand curve for a society, we need to sum the price by each person at each level of quantity. So that is for the public good. So the next one would be for the private good. Think for the private good, different story applies. Because at different price, different people may have different preference for the quantity, right? So this graph is an example for the bread for price between 4 to 6. Blue line is A's demand curve, green line is B's demand curve, and the red line is the total demand curve. So when the price is between 4 to 6, only B is willing to get some amount of bread, right? So we can say when the price is above 4 but below 6, the aggregate demand curve is only person B's demand curve, right? But when the price is above 0 but below 4, we can say A demands 1 unit of bread and B demands 3 units of bread. the aggregate demand would be 4. When the price is 2, A demands 2 units of bread, and B demands 4 units of bread. Then the aggregate demand would be 6, right? So when we connect all those points together, we get the aggregate demand curve. We can conclude that for private goods, aggregate demand is the sum of quantity demanded by each person at each level of price. So think about for public good, the social marginal benefit, or we can say the aggregate demand is the sum of price by each person at each level of quantity. For private good, the sum of the aggregate demand is the sum of quantity demanded by each person at each level of price. Think about the difference. That is because for private good, at a certain price, when you consume more, the producer can produce more, right? But for public good, when you consume more, will there be more air? No, that's not the case. So that's the difference between the public good and the private good. So this one is exactly the same as I talked before. We need to make a difference between the public good and the private good. Also, how to get the demand curve, the aggregate demand curve for public good, which is very important in this course, because it may be one of the questions in your exams or assignments. So here is a summary for this video. A pure public good is non-rival and non-excludable, like air, national defense. Free rider problem arises when the good is a public good. Aggregate demand for a public good is derived by adding individual demand, adding individual willingness to pay vertically at a certain amount of quantity, because each individual cannot change the quantity. Keep in mind. So here is the reference for this video. That's all for this video. I may record another video for you to make a difference between the public good and the private good using Excel. So I think in that way it would be more clear for you to make a difference about how to get the aggregate demand curve for those two different kinds of good. And I will definitely let you know the link when I finish that. So thanks for that. See you next time.